most people don't want to look at homelessness. It's not an issue that people want to engage with. It's an issue that people walk by and look the other way, right? We want it to actually make a difference. We want it to save people's lives.
Hey, welcome to Grow Healthy, Help People, a podcast that Accordas puts out. Today we're talking with Lenny from beendare.org. So Lenny, where are you calling from this morning? Where are we connecting from?
I'm actually up in Brooklyn, but Been There is based in Austin, so pretty much everything we're doing is in the Austin area.
That's great. So is Austin where you lived at one point, or you just know there's a grouping of like-minded people there? What is the Austin connection?
No, I mean, Austin, I grew up in Texas, in a small town and went to college in Austin. And so, everything that we're doing kind of grew out of an experience that we had in college in Austin. So my partner, Aaron, and I, who founded the nonprofit, we met when we were kids in Texas in summer camp, and we're friends, and we went off to college together. And, we had our first house that we ever had we were 19 years old, and we met a man who he was a former professor who was living in the park at the end of our block, and met this guy. And he was really friendly, and we'd strike up conversations. And then one day we saw him after a big rainstorm, and he's airing out all of his belongings. And we were like, look, like, don't sleep in the rain. Like, come, we have a big porch, we have a couch on the porch, there's a roof over your head. Whenever you need it, come and feel free to crash with us. And what ended up happening is, he basically ended up living with us for the whole year. We were in this house for 1 year, and what we thought was going to be, one night ended up being this whole, friendship and relationship. And it was really positive. He was a real kind of mentor figure for us. And his story was that he was a former professor, so he really was kind of educating us. And but with him came his whole community and all of the struggle that they were going through came to us. And so, it got to the point where we were living in a big house with, tents in our yard, and people living under our house in the crawl space, and people, in and out of our house. So it really was this point in our lives where we're trying to figure out, like, who we are and how we interact with the world, and
Why we exist?
yeah, and
What
like,
are we really doing?
we're college goof offs, right? Like, we didn't take life that seriously, but we were faced with a serious situation, and we were like, we don't we're we're goofy, screw ups, but we're human, and these are humans that are struggling, and the right thing to do is to try to help. But realized that it was a problem that was bigger than us, right? We were not able to really solve their problems. We were able to put a band-aid on it. And it ended, right? Like, we were six people in a house, and I think three of us were like, I don't care how uncomfortable we are, we're going to keep helping people. And the others were like, well, I don't feel comfortable in my home, because there were like a lot of things that came along with it that were uncomfortable. And so we had to end it. And I remember I had to go to this. They called him the professor. That was what we called him. And I had to go to him and say, hey, we feel terrible, but we can't keep doing this. And his response was simply, don't feel terrible. He said, just feel good that you did something. And he said, go out in the world and just keep doing good things. And that's like how it ended. And so, fast forward, we had this experience, we stayed really connected to this issue, but we went off and did, had careers and whatever. And then we both were in New York. Aaron moved back to Austin. He started a film production company. and he was doing commercials and other stuff. And we started, and I was like, we. It's a long story, but we had in New York we had a public access show, and we were like doing like creative things, and so we wanted to like keep doing creative things together. And we're like, well, what can we do? And we made some short films and kind of tested like storytelling and filmmaking, and then it was time to make a feature film, and we're like, well, what story do we want to tell? And just by accident, we actually went to Sundance with another film that we a short film we had made, and we were talking to other filmmakers, and they're like, oh, how'd you guys meet? And we're telling stories about when we were kids, and like this story came up, and people were like, oh, you should like that's a movie, you should tell that story. And so we started like kicking it around, and we're like, oh cool, like how would we tell this story? And we're like, well, it's about homelessness. And frankly, most people don't want to look at homelessness. It's not an issue that people want to engage with. It's an issue that people walk by and look the other way, right? We look away from it because it's so painful, it's so sad. And so we're like, how do we tell a movie, how do we tell a story about homelessness that people want to watch? And we're like, well, it was college, right? So why don't we make it like I mean, college was fun. College was funny. I mean, this experience with these people, like, they have great senses of humor. They're
Yeah.
like,
After all,
so
they are just people,
they're
right?
people, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, well, let's tell a human story. And the story's not about, and we kept telling this story to people, and they wanted the story to be really about the professor. And we were like, well, the story's actually about us. The story's about how did we we're goof off college kids. How do we kind of have our growth, right? Like he started in one place and he kind of ended in a similar place, right? But we changed and we grew. And so, we were like, we need to tell a story that we could say, hey, Shay, do you want to go see a movie about homelessness? And you'd probably be like, ugh, I don't feel like it right now. I don't, but if I were like, hey, do you want to go just see a like funny college comedy? And it's like Dazed and Confused meets Superbad. That's kind of how we were thinking about it. Um, and you'd be like, yeah, I want to, I want a relief from the sadness and the stuff that I have in my everyday.
Yeah.
And so we thought of it as
It's
like
not just a social impact movie. There's
yeah.
some of those out there, and you feel even like I need to give money. This is like just an enjoyable movie that has a meaningful
Totally.
message.
So I was like, I always say that, like, I have so many movies that sit in my Netflix queue that I know I should watch,
Yeah.
right? But I'm never at the end of
But
the
I
day
don't want
like,
to go on
oh,
that diet. So I mean, I know I should go on that diet, but I'm not going to watch that way. Yeah.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
So we were like, well, why don't we just called it Trojan Horse Social Impact, right?
Yeah.
And so we were like, cool, let's do this thing. It was really incredible. Even the way that like we raised money to make the movie, like we always just pitched it as like this movie is going to make a difference, right? This movie is going to have an impact by impacting the people who would
Yeah.
never watch a movie about homelessness, who don't
Yeah.
care about homelessness. And it was always trying to get that like audience that isn't engaged, and how do we get them engaged? And so we also were. So I told you when you were like, "Should we talk about my story?" The
Go for it.
journey is long, but like
I want to
it,
hear.
um, So then when we were making the movie, we were like, we don't want it to just be a message about homelessness. We're like, we want it to actually make a difference. We want it to save people's lives. And so we partnered with a nonprofit we were shooting the movie in Austin. It was based on our time in college in Austin. Um, and we partnered with a nonprofit that's called the Other Ones Foundation, and they were at the time supporting what was 200 tents. It was a 200 tent community, and basically this it was a state sanctioned piece of land that people were allowed to camp on, but the state really provided no services. And so this organization came in and they really, were helping, bring in social workers and just doing all the work to try to help people transition out of that community. And so we were like, great, let's, we're partnered with you. We committed that at least 10% of the movie basically would go to nonprofits and them and so we're off to the races. We're ready to make our movie, and COVID stops us from making our movie. And we were like, damn, like we really want to help this community. What do we do? And then Austin or Texas had those huge winter storms that knocked power out in the whole state. And we're partnered with, and we'd gotten to know. And during COVID, like I had gone to Austin, and my family we were staying there for a little while, and so we got to know a lot of people in that community, and they really were suffering like through that. People were suffering in their houses. So you can imagine if you're living in a tent. And so we were just, luckily Austin really came through, and the Other Ones Foundation really did a great job, getting people back on their feet after that storm, with bare necessities of like, new tents, new sleeping bags, food, water. And we were just like, well, what can we do to help? Because we're more in the like entertainment space. And Aaron, my partner, he used to produce a music festival in Austin or outside of Austin for many years. He did a lot of music videos. So we had, and one of our buddies, Adrian Casada, he's like Grammy Award winning musician. He All these people that we're friends with who are musicians were just sitting home because of COVID. They couldn't tour. They could, and so we were like, well, what if we just put on a music festival for 200 people living in tents? We're like, it's not open to the public. It's outdoors during COVID. It's safe. Like, we can do this. And we literally put on a music festival for 200 people in tents and the Other Ones Foundation, who are the people that are serving them, just to lift spirits. And it was beautiful. And it really like felt like when we were in college, we'd have like parties where it was, college kids dancing side by side with, people who live in tents or live in the park. And everybody was equal, and it was just this really incredible thing. And the Other Ones Foundation had invited, and that they were in their infancy. They had just started as a nonprofit too. So they were like courting some people in the community, and they invited like literal billionaires who came to this weird little festival we were putting on. And so we had like people
A
who
homeless
have
person
nothing
dancing beside a billionaire.
with somebody who has everything, right? And
Yeah.
so just this event was not a fundraiser, but it inspired
Yeah.
those people to donate. They donate $600,000.
Wow.
It was like two different donors who came through with that amount,
Yeah.
and it launched the Other Ones Foundation to be able to take this community from 200 tents to what is now 200 tiny homes or two
Wow.
tiny shelters. And
Permanent structures.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, we're onto something, right? And
Yeah.
and at that time we were like, we want to do this across the whole country. We're like, why? Let's go do, a concert in every city, highlight the musicians from that city, and the organizations that are doing amazing work there, and really use this as a way to get people to pay attention to this issue that nobody wants to pay attention to. And we premiered our movie in LA, and we tried to do a festival there. And honestly, it was, I mean, you work with nonprofits, but we reached out to so many homelessness nonprofits in LA, and I talked to a bunch of them, and they're like, look, like the issue there is so big that they're like, we just don't have the time to like, I'm like, you just have to show up. And they're like, you can mail us a check and we'll take a check if you raise money, but we don't have the bandwidth to like show up. And it was just like showed us that the scale of this issue is so big in LA and other places that, we were like, Austin is actually, we have a lot of resources in Austin. We have a lot of connections in Austin. We have a lot of artist connections too.
Yeah.
And, we're like, the issue there is very visible, but people estimate, that it's 5,000 people. So, the numbers vary. It's hard to estimate, but, people who are living unsheltered, it's around 5,000 people, and we like today we know the organizations we work with, there's at least 1,200 to 1,500 units of housing being built right now. So we're like, you can see how that number, you can bridge that gap. And we're like, okay, so if we really focus on Austin, we could solve this issue here. Like we can make it where this is a solvable thing. And then once we do that, great. Then we make it a road show and we're like, okay, we can replicate this. So that's where we kind of were like, let's focus on Austin. And
The film did get produced
we made the
after COVID.
movie. Yeah, we made the movie. It premiered. It went to LA. It went to New York. It went all over. Kevin Smith, who made Clerks and Chasing Amy and Mallrats and all those movies. I mean, he said it's the most important comedy you'll see.
If somebody
So
wanted to watch this now, where would they find it?
it's called Home Free. It's
Home
on all
free.
the streamers. I mean, you could get it
Okay.
on Amazon, Apple, YouTube.
Okay.
It's out. It's great. And it also like played in Austin for like 13 weeks. Like it just had a
Just
really
kept
great
going.
run
Okay.
locally. Um, and so now so we did that one festival, and then we were like, okay, let's do another festival. They started building those tiny homes, and they had a plan to build 200,
Yeah.
and they were building them in 50 unit like neighborhoods, they called it. And we're like,
Okay.
great, when you cut a ribbon on the first neighborhood, let's throw a music festival and
Okay.
let's do it. What was a private event, let's make it public. Let's invite the community in
Yeah.
so that people see what's happening here. And that event we threw, and it raised $1 million. And it was, and all this money is all for the Other Ones Foundation. This was also like, we were not even a nonprofit at the time. We were just doing this. And so it really, I mean, it was very easy to be like, you're standing on land. You're at a music festival. You're standing on land that will be tiny shelters. You can look right there. That is a neighborhood where people are living now. This all used to be tents. So it was really like a pretty powerful experience. So, and at that event, we were like, okay, well, like this feels like we can do more. Like we can use as an entertainment as a way to get people to really like pay attention to this in a different way that doesn't feel sad. It feels fun. It's celebratory. So that was when we started like, okay, let's make ourselves a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
And that was our mission, was like, how do we use art and its films and its music festivals, visual
Am
art.
I saying the wrong word? It seems like almost quirky. Like you just have a lot of different things that are going
Yes.
on with the purpose of saying, let's make an impact, but it doesn't have to be come to our fundraiser, sit down, listen to a speaker, write a check. It's
No.
like so what are some of the other fun, engaging ways that you guys are able to be out there in even earning revenue or having impact, but doesn't feel like would you give money?
Yeah. So I mean, it's an interesting thing where like, so through the music festivals, we've done four of them now. We've
Okay.
raised over $3 million
Okay.
for other nonprofits, not for us. So we're like this weird nonprofit that like we're still figuring out how we're 2 years into, like just over 2 years into being a nonprofit, and we're
Yeah.
like, how do we sustain ourselves? Because we're like the weird nonprofit that just tries to raise money and awareness for other nonprofits, which is great, and that's what we want to keep doing. But it is a challenge of like, how do we also raise for ourselves? But because, to answer your question, we have a ton of I mean, we're really in the business of like, how do we think of, like you said, quirky, fun, weird ways to get people's attention? So we just had a beer that launched in the fall. So Real Ale, which is like the biggest microbrew in Texas, like they put out a Been There beer, and it shares profits and it gets our name out into bars and stores, and it's really incredible to like suddenly have like another brand that is helping build our brand. And They got us like Forbes has written 2 articles on what we're doing already. But they kind of called it like the Project Red of homelessness, right? Of like, how do we get all these partnerships and really make it like we want to show up where people already are and where people already are having fun. And we want to make it fun. Like, you can just go to a music festival because, we've had incredible musicians play too. Like, the last one we did, like, Mixmaster Mike was there from the Beastie Boys and Ben Queller. We've had, the Far Side and we also like our movie had an incredible soundtrack that had like Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. and members of the Beastie Boys and the Far Side and Jurassic 5 and Luscious Jackson, all these incredible heroes of ours, musical heroes from the 90s, and then mixed with like the best of Austin too. And so that was this incredible music. We put it out as a double vinyl. It's available on Amazon or through our webpage beenthere.org. You can get it. But just other ways to get people to pay attention. And so now we're also working on, we have some documentaries we're working on. One that is really like, we've done a lot of like little, mini doc kind of storytelling for these nonprofits. Like, they are great at saving people's lives and helping get people back on their feet, but they're not the best at telling their own stories. So we've helped them, really like put their fundraising videos together that are, instead of hey, sit down and watch this, 20-minute long thing, we're like, hey, here's like a 2-minute video that's gonna get people's attention, have way more impact, and feel positive, like you're really moving things forward. So we're like, okay, well, we're doing that on like this small scale, but we were like, we'd love to do this kind of doc series of like, how do we highlight, the news. We've had this challenge where like we're doing all this positive stuff and the news, we've had like great, Upworthy covered us and Forbes covered us and,
Yeah.
But when it comes to general coverage, like a lot of the news is like, how do we, like they tell the sad, depressing or
Yeah.
horror stories about this
If
issue.
something bad had happened at your events, the news would have been all over it. If
Exactly.
it's good, they don't care. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're like, how do we wanted to do like, how do we tell like the fun solving homelessness story? Like tell people like, no, there are these organizations that already exist in your community that are solving this issue, and we need to stop. I mean, the state of Texas like sued one of the organizations we work with is Sunrise Navigation Center, and it's literally like the place that when they first try to stop people from entering homelessness. So they really do like early intervention. If somebody's on the brink of homelessness, they try to figure out how to stop that from happening. And then once somebody has entered the homelessness cycle, they help them navigate. They help them find all the different resources to get them back on their feet as quickly as possible. Because the quicker you do that, the less of a burden and a tax on, the system. And so the state of Texas sued them because they said they were like, there were too many people loitering and it was creating a dangerous situation. And so we're like, how do we tell these stories of like, that's what people hear, right? There were a lot of people, because our last festival, we, instead of before we were raising money for the Other Ones Foundation, the last one we did, we were like, the Other Ones Foundation, I think people don't understand that homelessness, people see multiple organizations in their community supporting homelessness, and they're kind of like, why? Like, why do we need all these organizations? Like, can't we just have like one big one that does, and so we wanted to point out that like the Other Ones Foundation, what they do is they do emergency transitional housing, right? And service. And they also do vocational training. They just opened a new skill center that people who live there can get college credits. And so we're like, okay, well, they do this one piece, but this group, Sunrise Navigation Center, they are the ones that stop people from entering homelessness and try to exit them as quickly as possible. And then if they can't, they navigate them onto the other one's foundation, right? And then they handle this bridge the gap between when somebody enters homelessness to when they qualify for permanent housing. Permanent housing, you have to have experienced chronic homelessness for over a year. So you have this whole year of time when somebody kind of doesn't have housing. And so that's what the Other Ones Foundation does is they give temporary housing or emergency shelter. And then, and so trying to like just show people that there is this continuum of care.
Yeah.
And doing it by having them go to a Mixmaster Mike, Ben Queller concert.
Event that they're going to love. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
cool. So between college and where you are today, what has been your professional journey? I know what you're doing with Been There, but there
Yeah.
has to be something else. So what is your day-to-day work like?
So, I mean, Bindler's become more of my day to day, but
Good.
my journey was I studied architecture and
Okay.
I did architecture for like 10 years, doing a lot of brand work, like
Yeah.
working with brands and coming up with new concepts for how a brand comes to market.
So you kind of know brand
Well,
logistics.
then I moved on. So I did that for 10 years. Then I did the next kind of 10 years of my career was like brand. I went to a brand strategy firm and I worked in a group called Experience Innovation. And so what we were doing was it was still rooted in like the core of it was we were all mostly architecture trained and environmental design, and but it was moving as the world was changing and brands were not as much in the physical space and they were moving to online and physical. It was really thinking about the brand experience and how does the brand show up everywhere that it shows up and how do you tell stories. And so it was really in this innovation space, and so that's where we are too with Been There is like how do we just innovate on like how do we show up like so the challenge is like we can come up with ideas all day, but you got to fund those ideas and like all
Yeah.
these projects have costs and
So that's
um,
part of what every nonprofit leader is navigating. What are
yeah.
ways that you've seen to that have worked for fundraising? You've raised a lot of money for other organizations. Now you're trying to make sure you have funds for you guys to keep going for a long time. What are some things you're doing for fundraising now?
I mean, we were very lucky that we had kind of a benefactor who really believed in what we were doing when we were making the movie, really believed in what we were doing. And, we had several investors, but he was really the like primary funder for that movie. And then
Okay.
when we were like, it was kind of his idea to make it just keep going. He's like, just keep going. And he's like, I got your back. And he helped really get us started with the nonprofit and funded it. Unfortunately, in our first year, he passed away. And so we had funds to, it kind of got us through the first 2 years. And so now we are at this weird place where we're a 2 year old nonprofit, but we are kind of just brand new at like figuring out how to raise money because we didn't have the issue of needing to sustain ourselves. And so we could put all of our effort into raising money for others. Yeah. So we have some new sources that have come through and are starting to we had just had our first one that's like a multi-year donation, but we're figuring it out. We're just learning how to like apply for grants and to um, but a lot of it is because we're doing this weird, quirky, a lot of people
Your interns don't understand that. They're
we
going,
don't fit in a box that people are used to, right? Like it's like people are like, well, and especially in the last year, which was the first year we had to raise money for ourselves, was a lot of the federal funding went away. So all these organizations are hitting their donors harder. So those donors who, have given in the past, by the time we would ask them, they were like, look, we're just needing to give to programmatic, direct giving to people who are helping people on the get off the street, right? And
Yeah.
so we're like, yeah, we can't argue with that, but because they're all giving more than they've had to
They're
give in the
they're,
past.
they're having to. Yeah,
Yeah,
the government pullback on funding, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I think we all understand more money left the pipeline that was fueling and feeding hundreds of thousands of nonprofit organizations.
yeah,
So whether it was right or wrong, the money is not there anymore.
right.
So you and every other organization are having to go find somebody just to give directly because those grants from government, one organization receives a grant and they give it to another one, it gets to another one. That pipeline's gone now.
So I mean, we kind of see ourselves as like an arts organization on one hand.
Mhm.
So we've also like we've raised $3 million for homelessness, but we've also funded almost $600,000 of art, right?
Yeah.
Giving to artists who are also struggling, right? Like they're so we're kind of like this arts organization, so we kind of are trying to appeal to, people who give to the arts, and
Mhm.
also, we are kind of a PR arm for the whole homelessness
Yeah.
fight,
It's a great
so
way to look at it. A PR arm for homelessness.
right.
I love
Because it
I
is
love the
all
way
it's
that's
so
Lenny, I can understand that. When you said that, it kind of encapsulates so much of what been there
yeah.
does.
Yeah, because that people just see the negative, and
Yeah.
where like there's so much positive
Yeah.
and so much momentum, and there's all these organizations that could solve this issue if we just added more fuel to their fire.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, if you had a dream, where would Been There be in 10 years?
I mean, where would we be? I don't know. I mean, honestly, the dream is that Been There is bigger than us. That Been There, I mean, when we started it, we were like, homelessness, and it's part of the PR thing, but it's like homelessness needs to be the next social movement that the United States goes through. Like it's
Yeah.
an issue that impacts every community,
Yeah.
and whatever your beliefs are, like I really believe that like it's an issue that everybody agrees is wrong. Like it's an issue that everybody believes in the United States of America, the richest country in the world, we should not have people sleeping on the street.
Hmm.
Um, Now we disagree on how do you address it? How do we, what do we do about it? But
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is just start conversations. Like people
Yeah.
don't the way people deal with it historically is like push it out of my community, criminalize it, get it off the street so I don't have to look at it, right? And we don't want to talk or push them to some other community so they have to deal with it. And so we're like, okay, well, it's not going away. It's actually getting worse. Everybody's talking about the affordability crisis and all that. It's something we need to talk about as a society. So what we're trying to do is like, how do we start those conversations?
Mm.
We
Yeah.
don't have all the answers. I mean, we know organizations that we think are actually
Yeah.
doing good work in solving this, but
But one thing is
so
not the
so
answer.
my answer for the where do I see it in 5 years? I would love for it to be a hashtag been there, and other people are putting on their own been there festivals and doing
Yeah.
their own been there projects, and doing whatever they can. I want it to. Right now, we're a very small organization with a lot of big ideas, um, but I don't. It can't just stop with us. It needs
It
to
has to be a
grow, and it
movement.
needs to get. And that's where the beer felt so great, is because we're like, this is another organization, another brand that's pushing the been there message, right? And
Yeah.
it is starting to grow, and
Yeah.
and so that's where we want to see it, is like to be a movement. We want it to be a movement.
That's great. And Lenny, as you're leading your organization that you founded, you have a lot of those admin tasks that are landing on your plate.
Yeah.
So if anybody's watching this today and is leading a nonprofit like Lenny and going, I have the mission in focus and I know what we need to do tomorrow, but I don't know how to get all the office work done. That's what Accordis, our company, does that. So at the end of this podcast, you'll see a link to Been There for their website. Also, Lenny, if someone wants to reach out to you guys, is there a way to do that on your website?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Lenny at beenthere.org.
Yeah. Hit up
Is
Lenny with any questions you have. Go watch Home Free. Is that the name of the
yeah,
movie?
yeah,
Okay, go watch the film Home Free and get some Been There beer. and enjoy that. And my hope,
You're one of our
Lenny, you said
festivals.
something early on. You said when your roommates in college in Austin said, "Hey, we can't have these people here anymore." Like I think you used the words like it ended there, and I want to encourage you that, like you said, it didn't end there. Like
No,
those
it
people
definitely
didn't.
stayed. It definitely stayed with us. And I think we were like everybody, we got busy with our lives and our jobs and families and but when it came to okay, we're gonna put our own thing out in the world, right? And what do we want to put out there? And it really was that message of like just go out in the world and keep doing good things that had been told to us when we were 19 years old. Um, so it stayed with us, and you know, when we started creating our own things, it was also like that feeling at 19 when you're like, okay, what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody who like doesn't take things seriously, and or do I want to actually like help make the world a better place?
Yeah.
So
Well, Lenny, I appreciate you saying yes. I'm going to invite them under my porch, and yes, I'm going to be living in Brooklyn one day, running this nonprofit, trying to make a difference and turn from a nonprofit to a movement. So, Lenny, best of luck to you. Thanks for the work you're doing. And we'll put some way to contact you and a link to the Accordis website. Go watch the film, drink the beer. Thanks for what you're doing, Lenny.
thank you.
Good day.